I didn't stay for the whole thing.
Okay. All right. I'd like to call the Physical Resources Committee of the Grand Traverse County Commission meeting to order. It's Wednesday, December 9th. We start with a Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And then we have the minutes of the November 9th meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to approve the regular minutes of November 9th as mailed.
Support?
Okay, I do have one comment. The minutes don't reflect the fact that the meeting started late. Because the meeting actually didn't start till, what, about 8 o'clock or 8:05?
And we'll make sure that gets changed.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. And then we have our first opportunity for public comment. Any comment from the public at this time? Okay, moving on then, we have facilities management. We don't have facilities management. Well, why don't we go on to the conservation district since Luke Coulter is here?
We're going to hit and miss this morning.
I don't know where Commissioner Hooper is.
How are the roads out there?
Pretty good, actually.
Oh, okay.
I mean, once you get onto Center Road.
Yeah, well, because you live on Center Road. So.
Well, yeah, but it takes, we're 200 feet off of Center Road, and that 200 feet is a problem.
Yeah.
So that's true. So anyway, Bruce is a good deal more off of Center Road. I'm Luke Coulter with the Grand Traverse Conservation District, and I brought with me today our Education Director, Colleen Masterson Bizdock, and she's going to deliver the good news. I'm going to deliver the bad news. Specifically, I'm going to talk about the Gypsy Moth program. We have completed our egg mass count for the, for the 2010 spring, and we haven't completed the mapping, and so we don't have any definitive numbers on acres, but we're thinking they're going to be about 1,500 acres throughout the county in about 10 jurisdictions, including Grand Traverse County and the city and about 8 townships. Usually it's about the same old suspects that have always had those gypsy moth problems. Of course, let me say again, there is no state funding for suppression for next year, and I don't anticipate that happening. We will be providing maps to the townships, providing information on how they can contact with aerial applicators, and they'll probably have to be taking action on their own. Actually, I'm not sure that that's going to be well advised, because we do expect the Forest 10 caterpillar to be a problem next year as well, as much as it was this past spring. And I think between the two, landowners aren't going to know the difference, and there's really probably no real good reason to do suppression at this point. But at any rate, we will be working with affected units to deal with this. Any questions on that one? Colleen's here to talk about a new grant we got from the Great Lakes Fisheries Trust that really furthers our education program at the Nature Center. It helps us. We're building a continuum of programming and education opportunities there, and Colleen's been instrumental in building that continuum, and certainly in obtaining this grant, and I'd like her to tell you about it.
Sure. Well, good morning. My name is Colleen Masterson Bizdock, the Education Director of the Grand Traverse Conservation District. And this new grant that Lou is speaking about is a $200,000 grant from the Great Lakes Fishery Trust as part of their Great Lakes Stewardship Initiative. And what they're doing is creating a statewide network of hubs for place-based education, which means that the students and teachers are using their own community as the starting place for their teaching and learning. In this case, specifically focused on Great Lakes stewardship. So in this community, we're going to have teams of teachers working at initially 3 to 5 target schools, but expanding over time, where we'll have professional development programs for these teachers starting in the summer of 2010. and then continuing during the following school year, ongoing sustained professional development for those teachers, helping them develop partnerships with community organizations that work on issues related to water, businesses, and helping them understand what some of the issues are in this community related to water and how their students can be involved in deciding on and implementing some of those solutions. So we would really be interested in any sort of coordination that might come out of this with the county as well. And it really helps the students to understand not just the science of water-related issues, but also some of the social sciences and getting involved in civic engagement and volunteer opportunities and things like that. So we're really excited about that. The focus is really on the professional development for teachers, creating those school community partnerships, and then helping to implement actual place-based education projects in the community. So there's a community service component for students as well. So we're really excited about this. We had a smaller planning grant to prepare for the proposal that we submitted and had great response from teachers and community partners on the sort of potential of the program. So we're looking forward to getting started, and the program starts in January.
Okay, any questions or comments?
I'm very impressed with the numbers that we're seeing at the visitor center and the people we're reaching. You know, it's kind of a tough decision for all of us whether or not we wanted to do this huge expansion and build the facility, and I think it's really paying off. I'm very impressed with the numbers of people that are taking advantage of the facility that we've jointly provided.
We are too, and thank you for those comments. We see nothing but growth in this. Certainly times are tough, but people are visiting, and we're going to try to make it as easy as possible for schools to participate. We have another grant application into Rotary Charities for K through 12 programming, which is really complementary to the program Colleen just mentioned. So that, together with the Great Lakes Fisheries Trust stuff and the adult programming we're already doing, I think it's kind of a good package.
You know, Lou, honestly, I think your numbers might be a little low. And the reason I say that is my husband and I have been out to the Nature Center a couple of times, and unless you're, photographing and counting people as they walk through the door, we didn't sign in. And so I honestly think that community participation in the Nature Center might even be higher than what you're recording.
There may be some slippage there. Are the volunteers at our front desk, even though you don't know it, they
count
mark you
me?
down as you come in. But, they're not always at the front desk, so there might be some. I think the big numbers we're missing are the folks that don't even come in, that are using the trails now because the building's there and they're feeling comfortable and so forth. That anecdotally has picked up considerably since we've been out there. So that's all we have.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
And next we have the housing liaison, and Virginia, while you get settled, I think Bruce will be ready to take over as soon as...
Okay, let's wait for him, let me wait for him.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's only going to be a few seconds here.
A little snow out your way?
A little bit, yes.
Lou said he had absolutely no problem with Sonny at his house. What's your problem?
Right out of the east.
Allowed for the timing, even though I was warned.
Good morning, I'm Virginia Colt. I work for Traverse City Housing Commission and am the housing liaison for the county. Are there any questions about my report this morning? I think that it's fairly thorough.
These construction projects all pretty much on schedule then?
Are the construction projects, well, this isn't the weather that we were hoping for, Sonny. Let me start with Homestretch's construction project at Keystone Village had a little delay because they had an equity issue. The banks pulled out, and NISHDA is picking up the ball on that, so it's moving forward, but it was delayed a little bit, but it's back on track. As far as the construction projects for the block grant, we have 2 projects underway, and one of them is, it was actually application number 18 That project is almost finished. There's just a door that's on order, and once they get that door, that project will be done. There is another project that is in Interlaken, in the Interlaken area, and that one is, needs a roof. So that will be weather dependent, and that's going to be a cold roof system. The last time I talked to the contractor, he was just getting the drawings stamped by an engineer, so we'll see how that one rolls. This is, like I said, this is tough weather for that. One of the Hyper projects is underway and needs a roof repair, and as it turns out, also needs a water line that we didn't know about, and so this isn't the weather this week that we were hoping for, because we'd really like to get those two items taken care of as soon as possible, because a bank needs to get that done so that they can get the loan sold to rural development. But I think it will. I mean, they're hoping to get it done before the end of the year, so they'll meet that timeline. We have one project, number 33, the bids are due back next week, so I think that one will be, as long as I can get a setup done, then we should be able to move forward with that one right away. And the Habitat down payment assistance, the same thing. I needed to get a budget amendment from NISHDA, because when we started our grant application way back a year and a half ago, we only anticipated one down payment assistant project. That's what Habitat thought that they would have, and the second one occurred because they had a family that moved and sold a home back to Habitat, so they're moving another family into that. But I need a budget amendment from NISHDA to allow us to do that. So that's underway.
Jenny, I've got a couple questions. I notice here that there's, for instance, number 25 in Interlaken, denial, no homeowner's insurance, home is in poor condition and doesn't appear lived in. How is it that a home that's not lived in applies for something like this?
Well, this application shouldn't have gone forward. I mean, it didn't go forward. We denied it.
Yeah.
Because the person applied, and then when we went out and looked at the home, it obviously was not being lived in. And so that's why it was denied.
Okay.
Because it has to be homeowner occupied.
All right.
Year round.
So basically, you were misled by the initial application?
Yes. Oh, sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Jenny, I know last month I asked you about the Habitat for Humanity thing with the county property on South Airport Road. Habitat came in and gave us a report at the last land bank meeting, and they will be moving forward that project shortly after the first of the year.
Speaking of Habitat, I'm very excited about one of these projects that I hope that will eventually be funded. The one, it's number 17 on the project list. This is a project where the application was made to us, oh gosh, it must have been maybe April. So it was a long time ago. It's a home that's in deplorable condition. I had the homeowners go to rural development to see if they could get some money from rural development to replace it. Rural development wouldn't accept their credit situation, and Habitat is willing to work with us and replace that home. So that's sort of new ground for Habitat in this community, to work on a replacement project. And it's new ground for us, too. We've done replacements with rural development, but we have not done it with Habitat before. And I've talked to the fellow who's in charge of field services for MISHDA, and he will allow us to just reimburse Habitat for materials, so we won't have to use a fair bid process that we normally have to use. So I'm really excited and looking forward to doing that. Habitat is in a hiring process right now to hire a new executive director, and as I understand it, that person should be on board early in the new year. So I'm hoping that this will be their first project and we can really run with it.
Could you explain what a replacement is again, as opposed to just building a new one, you mean, or?
Well, generally, the monies that the county is able to lend in this program, we're able to lend up to $35,000 for home repair. But if the house is in horrible condition, that money can be used towards a replacement project. But, you know, these funds, the maximum is $35,000. So there needs to be a first lender. In the past, I think I've worked on 5 projects, maybe 6 projects in the past, and rural development has always been the first lender, and then the block grant monies have been used as what they call a soft second, so it's a 0% deferred loan in second position.
So Habitat's stepping up and being first in this
Right.
case? Oh, okay.
Right. And in this case, we may even be able to pull in some monies that Northwest Michigan Community Action Agency is administering. They administer a rural development housing preservation grant that can be used in tandem with the block grant.
I think many times, you know, we don't realize the impact Habitat has in housing in our community. You know, Ms. Kyogama outlined to us last month that they have 10 construction projects scheduled in 2010, 5 new homes and 5 remodels. So that's a pretty aggressive program for a volunteer organization.
Yes, it is.
And I commend all of those that participate.
They have an aggressive board right now. I think they're really looking to the future, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, especially in this climate. Any further questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bruce, I might comment that we haven't done the facilities management, item 3 yet.
Is there any particular reason?
Because, well,
Danny's
because
not
Danny's
here.
not here.
I forgot that
I
Danny
don't-
won't be here.
Oh,
it's
so we don't need him to do this.
Well, it depends on you, but no, I don't think so. We'll wait till, you can wait till the end, though, since
All
we
right.
have so many people, and I'll just handle it.
Sure, let's have planning then. Visual aids.
It's early morning, you know.
Good morning, John Syke, Grand Traverse County Planning Director, and I just wanted to kind of give you an update on some of the things that we're doing in terms of preparing for the 2010 census, which is on April 1st, 2010. And this is an important event for not just the nation, but particularly Grand Traverse County, and our interest is trying to promote the census and get better awareness of the census and get better response. In my memorandum that's in your packet, covers some of the things that we're looking at. First is kind of the message and getting to people to understand the importance of the census. Obviously, its primary purpose is to determine our representation at the federal government. And it's interesting to note that in 1970, we had 19 representatives in Congress. We're down to 15 now, yet our population is higher. So it goes to show you that while Michigan has grown over the last 40 years, we're not growing at the pace that other states are. And I think it's going to be impacted further by the current economic downturn. We're not experiencing, at least from my estimations, significant population losses here in Northwest Michigan, but certainly in Southeast Michigan, from what I've spoken with people, it's pretty significant. So I think what I've heard is that most likely we will lose at least one representative in 2010 as a result of the census. And so it's certainly an important part of not just the county, but for the state of Michigan as well. Primary role, too, is the federal government disperses billions of dollars annually. A lot of these monies are determined by population. Just recently, when we did our energy efficiency grant application to the state of Michigan, the amount that we could apply for was actually based on our population. It was a per capita amount. So the more accurate account we have, the better off I think the county will be. It's also a benefit for planning purposes. Revenue sharing is obviously part of that formula is based on population. For businesses, really look towards the census in terms of doing marketing and understanding communities. Some of the other messages, one that we're really trying to address right now is the issue of snowbirds. And since that's a big part of our population here in Grand Traverse County, and to let them know that they'll be receiving two forms. They'll be receiving one here at their permanent home here in Michigan, and if they go to some place like in Florida or Arizona or wherever, they'll be receiving one there too. And we're asking that people fill out their questionnaire from their location when they get back here in Michigan. They can send the one back if they're down in Florida or wherever, back to the census, but unfilled out and say, not permanent address. And when they get back here in Michigan, even if it's late in April, it's still appropriate for them to turn it in from Michigan. And that's important that they get counted here and not counted elsewhere. We've had a couple of committee meetings I've organized in trying to get some people together and locally and how we can do some outreach. We've identified some ways through the media and so forth, getting the information out. I do have a contact. Her name is Pat McDonald. She's with the U.S. Census Bureau in Grand Rapids. I've been meeting with her a couple of times, most recently yesterday. And we were meeting with the manager at the Grand Traverse Mall. We're going to be holding the U.S. Census Bureau has a road show that travels around, and it'll be coming to Traverse City on March 9th. And we were looking for a location, and it'll most likely be at the mall if everything works all right. And that's really just, again, to promote the census. There is a census office already opened up in Traverse City. It's over on Munson down by 3 Mile, and that office is really not for promotional purposes, but really is the operational arm of the census, and those are the organizers in terms of the field personnel that needs to be out there. Right now they're checking addresses and so forth and getting ready for the questionnaire, which will be mailed out in mid-March.
So are they going to be hiring people then too to go?
They have been hiring people already. They may, I'm not sure if they're going to be hiring additional people, but basically everybody that's in that office right now is hired temporarily. They have office managers down to field personnel. What the Census Bureau relies on is primarily mail returns. Everybody will be receiving a questionnaire in the mail, and they try to get about 80% of the people to respond in that way. If people do not respond, they'll send a follow-up questionnaire, and if they don't respond after that, then they basically come to your door, and they'll come to your door a few times, and if you still don't respond, then actually they talk to neighbors and try to find out information. They really try to go to the extent of trying to get people counted. We have some materials, and I'd like to hand out for you. I know some of you may have received some of this.
I have one, thank you, John.
You want to pass one on to somebody?
I certainly can.
Okay. That's what I'm telling everybody, if they've received something, if they could just pass it on to other people.
Are you distributing these to the library then too?
All right.
Libraries, yeah.
Yeah, we right now what we're doing is just kind of setting up the campaign.
Hours at work.
Yeah, it was a census too, 1970.
We're trying to figure out what we can do, where we can put materials, and we haven't. The timing is important. You don't want to get stuff out there too early, because then people kind of forget about it, or so you really kind of want to hit. We're really trying to focus on hitting people starting in February, but really in March, particularly mid-March, when the mailing goes out. That's why it's helpful that the roadshow is going to be here on the 9th, because that's just a few days before the actual mailing goes out. In these, in this packet here, I just want to point out we have one flyer here that is for snowbirds, and kind of gives them some instructions on how to respond to the census. And that's a key one. There's also a simple handout in there about 10 questions, 10 minutes, and it's really about, it's kind of a snapshot of the whole census. It has on the back the kind of the calendar, but you also have within there a copy of the actual census form. It's just a sample, and this is all it is. It's 10 questions. Everybody gets the same thing. There's no long form. It's strictly a short form.
So I was under the impression that occasionally they'd send out this, but then they'll end a percentage of long forms. That's not, they don't do that anymore?
No, they've eliminated the long form completely. What they did, what the census has done over, say, the last 20 years is supplemented that data with other surveys. There's something called the American Community Survey that's done intermittently, and there's a whole host of surveying that the census does every year, and not just every 20 years focused on this. Why this is the primary census, there are other means of them gathering data and information. So I just kind of wanted to bring you up to date. We'll be, you'll be hearing more from me, and we're reaching out to different parts of the community. You know, a lot of times we're kind of preaching to the choir. You know, most people are going to be responding to the census, but our focus is to really get to those populations that may be skeptical of filling out the form for one reason or other, or are just not aware of it, and really trying to address how this census really impacts Grand Traverse County and how it benefits us. And the more accurate count that we can get, the better off we're going to be. Any more questions? Or
John, with our aging population, we have a large number of, for lack of better terminology, senior living centers. You know, I think we need to stress to our census takers that those populations are going to need some help filling out this information, and because of the numbers of people in this community that are in those facilities, I think we need to really stress those as a target population for us to make sure we count. Because you know, a lot of them, you know, if you just, you know, mail a form to whatever address you have, it may or may not get taken care of. But, you know, and I'm not talking, you know, just like the pavilions, you know, there's just a lot of facilities, you know, the apartments at Bay Ridge and various other facilities in this community that are full of seniors that may or may not take care of this if we don't, you know, really target them for it.
yeah, the next couple of weeks I'll be meeting with the manager from the Traverse City office here, and I can talk with them about how they're going to achieve that. I've also talked with, there's other populations out there like the homeless that need to be counted and so forth, and talking with the gentleman at Goodwill that works with the homeless, and so there's those special populations that we really need to address that, you're right, are often kind of not always easy to count.
Now, is there federal funds coming into the county to help compensate you for the actions like this, or?
Well, I'm getting, I have a liaison with the Census Bureau that provides a lot of support and materials and everything like that, so, and is helping me organize and get information out of there. I mean, providing all this type of stuff. There's a lot more that they can do in terms of that will be beneficial. But my hope is to also reach out to the other organizations like United Way and so forth that also have an interest in ensuring that there's a good turnout.
John, be sure to have a discussion with Georgia Durga at Commission on Aging as well.
I've already been in contact with her, and so.
I think it's important to note John's effort in this process, because to answer your question, nobody other than Grand Traverse County is paying for John's wages to the best of my knowledge, and he already had a full plate before we asked him to undertake this project, and I know it takes a lot of time. I appreciate the effort.
I think it's an important part. I think, like I said, it really impacts us on how we are able to tap into state funding and federal funding and just better recognize what the community is really composed of.
Okay, any other questions? Anything else? Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Jeannie?
There's a homeless count that's done, it's going to be done on the last Monday of January. I don't know if that would be beneficial at all, if there's some way to, it's agency driven.
Okay. That's from local service agencies?
It's the continuing care committee. Cheryl Macarella coordinates that.
Okay.
But Cecil McNally is very active. He's the regional representative of the community.
Well, that might be helpful in terms of when they'll still have to do another count for the census. I mean, when the census does it, but I can tell you there's people that might be able to assist the census takers in the local office here on how to do that.
Okay, and I know for some reason I had a form that was passed on to me from the county about census, and I filled that out as best I could, and I believe the shelter, I know in the past the shelter has received Goodwill in the shelter has received the same form and has sent that back and talking about where they find homeless people in our areas.
Right, yeah, there's been a lot of preparation that has gone on prior to this point. I mean, the Census Bureau has been preparing for this since basically the last one, but more recently, we've had a few opportunities where we can help them get better data of where people are located, whether it's street address information, updated building construction information, as well as where homeless populations already are, senior housing and that type of thing. So that's what I think that was part of, is just finding out where people are congregating, at least initially.
Okay, up next we have Parks and Rec, and Jason obviously is not here. And I think this is going to be a rather involved discussion. Is it okay if we skip that for now and move on to resource recovery, since Bob is here?
Well, Kim is here.
Oh, Kim.
So if I could, the monthly report is included here. Jason has had a handicap accessible training and put his report in under number A. Kim will speak about the Eastling Pool report. And in terms of Twin Lakes easement, you asked last month, or Jason talked to you last month about the possibility that we might have to use fund balance to finish that project off. And Jason has included a different strategy in here whereby he believes that our Kellogg grant will not be affected if we don't have the money right now to complete the floating dock. And he is suggesting that we look at that as a separate piece of the project and that we go for other grant funding to try to address that issue. So really what he's saying is there's no need for you to consider doing anything different with that project at this point in time. He's going to look for more grant funds for it.
Okay, so we want to do Parks and Rec right now? So
yeah, I think the monthly report's here. Any questions you have, Kim and I will take them back to Jason, and if it's okay with you, we'll have Kim do her report on the pool.
Good morning, Kim Moore, Aquatic Manager for Grand Traverse County Parks and Rec. Quick little overview of what's gone on in the last month. We've developed a new program guide that has been out to the public, and registration started for the swimming lessons on November 30th. We were able to take our swim lesson offerings from 36 classes that were offered in the fall to 99 that'll be offered from January to March, our winter term. And that number doesn't include specialty classes like aqua camp and lifeguard training. Lifeguard training is planned for Christmas break. We've got another class planned for spring break. The Christmas break class registration on that one has already started, and we're already at a 6 for the numbers there, which is exciting. Aqua Camp is the new program that we started. Numbers in that one are kind of low. We're trying to get some advertising out on that one just because it is a brand new program. And I'm not sure the community's used to looking at the pool for for programs for their kids over the holiday time. So we're hoping to get some advertising out on that, but that class is going to offer an art project, a 30-minute swimming lesson, and then some open swim. So
And when will that be held, Kim?
that's going to be held December 28th through the 31st from 9 a.m. to noon.
And they can do one day, or is it every day?
It's a 4-day camp.
4-day camp, okay.
Yeah. Our swimming lesson program has been completely revised and changed. A couple of the major changes are that we're compliant with American Red Cross standards, which changed our swimming lesson times from 50 minutes to 30 minutes. And the American Red Cross now offers a preschool swimming lesson program. So we are compliant with that, where before we just offered Civic Center lessons for our preschool program. And to extend kind of what the Red Cross had, we added some half levels so that the kids could progress through levels more quickly, but still maintain the same standard that the American Red Cross has set out for us. The 30-minute swimming lessons have helped to change the pool schedule to eliminate those 10-minute dead zones. Currently, we started November 29th with a new interim winter schedule, or fall schedule, I'm sorry, and that eliminated almost all of the dead zones. And you will see starting January 3rd that they will be eliminated 100% as per the Lutra report. Programming school rental groups for the winter term has started. They all seem to have been adapting well to fitting into our time constraints. One of the things that Lutra had recommended was that we don't cater our programs around the rental groups, and instead they cater to fit into what works for our pool schedule. So currently we have 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Monday through Friday available for school groups to rent. We have, for most of the 3-month term that the winter term is, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays are already taken. So school groups have been adjusting well to that. Planning stages have begun for events to go on at the Civic Center. My favorite one that we're getting to do is the underwater egg hunt, and that is scheduled to happen on April 2nd from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. We're going to set up the meeting room, kind of like a little carnival aspect, while people are waiting for their turn to go ahead and be in the pool and do the underwater egg hunt. That way we don't have a rush of people all at a certain time. We'll kind of be in time spots. And I'm working with the Breakers swim team to get them to help as volunteers. We can have some of their higher level athletes actually in the pool to assist the parents during the egg hunt. We've been able to hire a new lifeguard, and another one is coming on too, so that's pretty exciting. Our staff numbers have been low, and so it's good to get some new blood in there. We've secured an ad in the momstyle.com newsletter, as well as their preschool program that will go out to parents looking for preschool programs for their children in the area. We've had a really good ad campaign going on by Laura Engler. She's our new customer service representative. She's been developing really great ads, and we're hoping to get some out to the schools to let them know of our swimming lesson program. It's currently been sent off to TCAPS, and we're waiting for approval on that. We've already sent it to Grand Traverse Academy. They said that they would post it on their website and pass it out to students. And we're getting numbers back from the Catholic schools as well. So a lot of new advertisement going out. And we also, over Thanksgiving, we were able to keep the pool open through the holiday weekend, which was a new thing. And I came in actually every day over the holiday weekend. And Friday when I was in, we opened at 11. And I came in about 12:30, and we already had 18 lap swimmers in. So it was well received by the public and well used. So that's another, Lutra recommendation was to stay open over the holidays. And so we've been able to meet that need, and the public is really enjoying it. Any questions, or?
I realize the registration for the new swim classes has only been going on for what, just a little over a week, right?
Correct.
Do you have any indication of what kind of response you're getting right now? Or?
The online was a really big hit the first 2 days. After that, it really trickled off, and we had a lot of comments from people that they were waiting for the walk-in registration to begin because they didn't want to pay the convenience fee that the active system charges when they do the online. And unfortunately, we haven't seen a really big surge of people coming in to do that. Our numbers are kind of similar to what we had in the fall, down a little bit. But I think that people are signing up for just one session, and being that now we're able to offer Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes, Monday, Wednesday classes, Tuesday, Thursday classes, Saturday classes, and Sunday classes, and not so sure the public is used to going, okay, I've got to sign up for Monday, Wednesday, Friday from now till March. I think as that session ends, they might go, oh, I need more lessons. And so hopefully we'll see some people signing up for that. A lot of the session 1 stuff is filling up. We have already closed out. Several of the Saturday classes have met their maximum, and as well as a couple of the weekday ones. So.
Great. Any other questions? Sonny?
Dennis, I guess the question I have is for you. I note that in a report that they're hiring lifeguards and they have hired a public relations person or community contact person. Those positions were in the staffing plan and are funded in the 2010 budget?
Lifeguards are part-time and temporary employees. The customer service position is a temporary employee as well. It's a customer service position. They're the ones that are there at the desk for some period of time. I think it's in the afternoons now.
She's there in the morning.
Mornings
she
now?
opens and she's there till about 12:30.
So we started with them in the afternoons and we moved her to the mornings, I think, to try to catch more people. And so there's no staffing plan change needed for those. But if we decide, once I think we decide, and the Parks Board's been looking at this, but once we decide what it's permanently going to look like, then I think what I'd like to do is bring that whole plan back to the county board to see. The good news from talking to Jason is that since we put the customer service person on, revenues are up in each month from this time last year. They've shot, well, I think we had one maybe.
30% or more.
Yeah, they're up quite significantly. So, we're still assessing the
question is, does that mean the numbers are up that we're collecting for the people that are using the pool?
Yeah, we don't.
Correct.
Yeah, for sure we're collecting some that we weren't before, I'm guessing. But we're still assessing that and trying to determine how that'll work. Jason wants to add another customer service employee. I've asked him to discuss that with the Parks Board after him and Kim have kind of figured out the value of that. And I haven't heard the final decision on that yet.
Chris?
The Parks Board did discuss it at their December meeting, and Dennis is exactly right, and Kim, revenues are up considerably. When the customer service rep started out, she started out working in the afternoons, and Commissioner Byrne at a Parks meeting said, to Jason, we've got a 2-hour block for the swim team, we've got a 2-hour block for breakers, perhaps you ought to put the customer service rep on in the morning. And Jason did that, and revenues went up 47% from October to, 2008 versus 2009?
Correct.
Yeah, 47%. So I really think that a lot of people were just coming in and using the facility, but with only Rob there in the morning and he can't leave the pool, there's no way for anybody to pay unless they've got the exact change. And if you're carrying a 20, who's going to slide that in there? So I really think that was a huge help. And the Parks Board did did agree that, if Kim wants to do a customer service rep part-time in the evenings, if she thinks it's valuable, go for it.
I think we're looking at moving to the weekends first.
And that was a
That's what the plan
Lutra
is.
recommendation to have customer service people.
I remember that, but I just didn't remember approving a staffing plan change, so that's why I
Yeah,
was
they're
asking.
part-time, temporary, and that's not required.
And I've got a question for Dennis, but it's not on the pool report, it's on the,
Anything else for Kim?
The monthly report?
Anything else for Kim? Thank you, Kim. Good job. You're doing a really good job.
Thank you.
yes, she is. Dennis, when you and Bob came to the scholarship committee meeting, Bob, as I told you on the phone after he said it, Bob mentioned that any fee changes have to come in front of the county board. Did you clarify that with Bob at all?
I did talk with Bob about it, and he has not responded back to me about what the final determination of that was, so I'll get back to you as soon as I know.
Okay, the Parks Board, again at December's meeting, received a letter from Jason. Jason gave a substantial reduction to a customer for Twin Lakes, and the Parks Board didn't know anything about that. It's my understanding, and it wasn't, the fee reduction was not even requested by the customer, Jason just apparently gave it to them. And that's fine, but the Parks Board said at December's meeting that we would like to be informed, when fees are changed. When do you think we might hear from Bob? And the reason I ask that is because I want to bring something in front of the Ways and Means and/or the county board regarding lessons using scholarship money. And I don't know exactly, I guess I could bring it in front of the board.
I'll try to get an answer to that by the end of the week.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Sonny, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ross.
Okay, Ross?
I just had a quick question on Twin Lakes, on the project there, Dennis. Because Jason's talking about splitting the floating dock from fabrication and installation. So basically, we're going to pay for the fabrication now and then just wait on the installation, is that?
No, my understanding is
Or-
that the floating dock section will be considered separately, but I'll get a clarification for you on that. I have to clarify that with Jason. My understanding was the whole floating dock section, but I may be wrong on that, so I'll have to get you a clarification.
Okay, because my memory from last month is that, this company that's, fabricating it had already started on it, or
Yes, they have.
had already done some of the work or whatever. And obviously, we needed to, honor that commitment.
But I believe that we were not going to pay anything until completion, until we found the funds for that.
Okay.
I've directed Jason that we not pay for the dock until the money is all there to do the project and the install. So,
Okay.
but I will clarify that, and I'll get that answer back to Ways and Means.
Thanks.
But there are docks by the dock. There's now access to the water still, right?
Yeah, but it's not the floating dock system that allows access for handicap, and that's what we're trying to do.
Sure,
It's about
that's the whole point.
$160,000.
That is the key part of the floating dock, right?
It is.
Is the
Well,
handicap access.
Absolutely.
There's a couple parts about that project in regard to the dock. Is the dock system that was designed and spec'd and bid for this project not only provides the access in the beach area, if you will, but basically creates a boardwalk, if you will, all the way across to where the kayak launch is down at the bottom of the other wooden stairway. So, it's a pretty massive type facility, and I think one of the discussions that, has been had is whether or not, we provide the handicap access part in the lifts to allow people in and out of the water, and maybe second phase, if you will, that portion that comes across the waterfront down to where the kayak launch is. If that's the way it ends up with from money. But I know that some discussion has been had about that, but I don't know exactly where that's at. You do note in the process, or in the report, that Twin Lakes is pretty much at completion The one portion that I know a little bit about is the fact that the handrails and guardrails for all of the walks and stairways came back from the galvanizers last week, went to National Coatings to be painted, the first coat, and weather permitting, installation will start tomorrow to install those rails. You know, but the way the architects spec those, the railing, the installation of the rails requires augering 8-inch diameter holes, 36 inches deep, setting the railing and pouring them in concrete. Very difficult to do in this kind of weather conditions.
Right, 6 to 8 inches.
So, you know, assuming that the weather gives us any break whatsoever, I'm anticipating 3 days installation time if everything goes right. But we have all intentions of starting the installation tomorrow. Like I say, obviously we're a little behind schedule. I hadn't quite anticipated a fire in the middle of my process. So we got held up for a couple weeks with the fabrication of the rails, and the galvanizers turned them around within a week. National Coatings, because we were late into the fall, a lot later than we anticipated, decided to put the first coat of paint on them in their warehouse or in their shop instead of doing it on site. So, you know, then they'll put the final coat on in the spring. But the rails are all fabricated. They are on site. When they came back from the galvanizers and came back from the painters, they were delivered to the site. One of the problems that we have is Jason and I spoke about it last week. We are anticipating getting them installed, but if we don't get them all installed, we do have to at least move some of them from where they are because they're going to interfere with plowing of the sidewalks, which we're going to do. Like I said, we're anticipating starting construction installation tomorrow.
Okay, now I guess we're on to the easement, Twin Lakes. And somebody want to lead that discussion?
Well, I can. I pulled it from the consent
Sure.
calendar on the Board of Commissioners, and I did so because I think there should be some benefit to the county. And I know that we are trying to raise funds for Twin Lakes, and I did run the easement papers by Ed Rice with Traverse City Light and Power, and I talked to a couple of Light and Power board members, and I said, you know, is this worth something? And they said, of course it's worth something. And I think that even if we ask for $500, $600, $700 for this easement, as limited as it is, and dedicate those funds towards the Twin Lakes project, I think that's beneficial to the county. I don't think we should give it away for nothing.
My problem is charging a public facility for the use of public land. You're essentially charging the taxpayer twice, aren't you? Because people...
Consumers Energy is the one that's paying it. It's a private company.
Public utility, well, okay.
They're not a public utility. They're not a public.
Right.
You know, I guess in my mind, the road frontage on North Long Lake Road to the Twin Lakes Park is very minimal, you know, which is where we're talking about going across there. You know, I would have this discussion based on the fact of the community good of the benefit of the easement of getting the line off from over top of South Twin Lake and getting it back on the road right away where it can be serviced. One of the problems we have with all of these power lines when we get them away from the roadways and get them off in the area is when you have storm damage or anything, those areas are not accessible. And that's why more and more the utilities are moving power lines and gas lines back to the roadway so as that they can service them for storms. Recently, you know, we had some storm damage that was, you know, 100 yards off from the road, and literally they cannot get equipment to it without driving across people's lawns and things to get to it. And then you have issues of, okay, where's the septic tank, where, you know, damage to the lawn. These trucks are big and heavy. You know, a month ago they installed a new pole in behind my neighbor's house, and I still have pretty sizable ruts across my back lawn, you know, just simply because they, you know, it's part of the nature. You know, to me, there's a community benefit of getting those power lines off from over top of the lake where they absolutely can't be serviced, and I'm questioning whether or not it's even safe to have them there. compared to the minimal amount of money that the county would receive for the change.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to grant Consumers Power a easement across the Twin Lakes frontage property on North Long Lake Road.
Any support? I will support that. So we have essentially the same motion, the easement for Consumers Light and Power to move, no, for Consumers Power to move their easement and power lines from over Twin Lakes to, Twin Lakes Road.
Adjacent to North Long Lake Road.
Adjacent to North Long Lake Road. Yep. Ross?
Dennis, has there been any discussion with Consumers Power since this is what rejected where it Ways and Means?
End of the month.
From the county board.
That was the BOC? Okay.
Yes, I directed Jason Jones to make contact with his contact through Consumers, and he indicated that the board had rejected it and has an interest in being reimbursed or being compensated for the easement. His contact didn't know, didn't have any authority or didn't know where to go with that, and he said his boss would have to get back to Jason, and has not done that. So we're waiting to hear back from Consumers, assuming you decide that you want to get compensated for it.
But this motion was sent to us, this proposal was sent to us from the Parks Board, right?
Yeah, my suggestion is that whatever you decide to do, that you run it back through the Parks Board and allow the Parks Board to have some input into it, since they were the ones who recommended it to you. I believe they took action, didn't they, Chris?
Yes, and they voted in favor of granting the easement at no charge.
Yeah. So I'm suggesting it go back to them, but I guess it doesn't have to if you decide you want it to come right back to you. But I did initiate the process with Jason, but, we're waiting for the direction from you.
I believe we already have the recommendation from the Parks Board, though, to grant the easement to Consumers Energy at no charge.
Right.
And then at the Board of Commissioners meeting last month, we pulled that and sent it back to this committee.
That's correct.
For further discussion.
Okay, any further discussion, Ross?
Have we had situations where we get some sort of compensation for an easement such as this, or?
We have not done compensation that I'm aware of for utility easements. Since I've been here, we have not. We have done compensation, we have received compensation for easements on towers, radio towers and things like that, but in terms of land easements, I don't think we have. I don't recall that, Commissioner.
Okay, I mean, I'm thinking of one situation I know between Light and Power and the Hickory Hills area, that I'm aware of just anecdotally, where I believe Light and Power paid $20,000 for a power line easement across the Hickory Hills.
That would be
park.
with the city.
Yeah, between Light and Power and the city.
Yep.
Dennis, do you happen to know how much frontage footage we have on North Long Lake Road?
I do not, offhand.
I know it's very minimal.
And the rest is an easement along Lake Road, right?
I'm sorry?
And then the rest of the line will be an easement along Lake Road.
Well, no, because Twin Lakes Park has very little frontage on North Long Lake Road. As you approach the driveway at Twin Lakes, obviously to the west is the driveway that goes down to Chas McCall's home. That front bluff area that you're seeing along the roadway is on Jim Gallagher's property. So, the footage that Grand Traverse County owns on North Long Lake Road is very minimal. And I had all intentions of looking up what the footage was, and I apologize, I forgot.
And that's what we're granting.
That's what we're granting, is that, I'm going to say it's 200 yards.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, we have a motion and to grant the easement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same?
Aye.
Let's have a roll call, Chris.
Rex Bauer? No. Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Rob Richardson?
Yes.
And Hooper?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, now we have resource recovery.
Good morning. Bob Ostott, Resource Recovery Manager. I have one item for consideration this morning. It is the renewal of the Clean Sweep Grant for 2010. The grant is for $12,000, and it covers the cost of pesticide and mercury collection at our HHW events, our household hazardous waste events. It also covers the cost of pesticides and mercury collected in Benzie, Leonard, and Antrim County as well. It's the same amount that we had last year. I think this year we are going to spend about $9,500, so the grant should be enough to cover 2010 as well. I recommend approval of the grant with authorization for the chair to sign such grant. Are there any questions?
Yes, Sonny.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the Clean Sweep grant, recognizing that this is a reimbursement grant. The money is only received if we expend the monies.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the grant and to authorize chair to sign the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and we going to do anything with the road commission? Just accept and file, or?
I'm guessing they're a little busy this morning.
I guess they are.
Okay, we'll just
We hope they're
accept
busy.
and file, I guess. Ross has a question for Dennis, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not sure that we're really involved in this, but item number 2 in the report, Dennis, or Sonny, since you're the liaison with them, we have a contract for South Long Lake Road, but we're short on the local match.
I'm not exactly sure what all is in that project that was applied for the MDOT grant. I know that there's a proposal to create paved shoulders along most of South Long Lake Road and replacing a bunch of signage and things. I don't believe it includes any re-engineering of the curves. South Long Lake Road is a section of road that has a lot of runoffs, a lot of people running off the corners.
I'm well familiar, and
down in the swamps.
Yeah.
But also they have, there's grant money and local money to fund paving of shoulders to provide access for bicycles and non-motorized traffic. And I'm not exactly sure how much of that is in this grant, and
Commissioner Wheelock is, of course, the liaison to the road commission.
Next week, when the road commission meets, I will have that discussion, but
I would point out, the bid letting was December 4th, so my guess is, as they've done in the past, they're going to get bids, they're going to see how the bids come in, and often recently, the bids have come in lower, which would reduce the local match.
Okay, do you know what percentage of the project the local match is? Okay.
I'm sorry, I do not.
All right.
But this is a project that's been ongoing for probably 5 years. The surveying, the engineering is all completed. It's just the construction part that's left to do.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, let's bring up MSU. Grant application approval and everything?
Looks like they're going to gang up on us. I think there's more of them than there is of us this morning.
Just if I could, Chris got an email just now from Mary Gillis indicating that because of the work that they're doing, they will not be able to attend this meeting, so.
Good morning.
Morning, Roberta.
I'm Roberta Dow from MSU Extension and Michigan Groundwater Stewardship Program, and this is Heather Noteboom. She's a VISTA volunteer working with the Michigan State University Extension Office, and she's working with myself and Dr. Duke Elsner and with 4-H. What we brought to you were 5 proposals for grant the proposals were to Zonta, to Haggerty, to Dow, and to Rotary Charities, and to consumers. And all of these proposals are for funding, for a training program for teachers in the area, for training in Project WET. Project WET is a program that helps teachers reaching their curriculum goals for their GLCEs, which is their science goals. And Project WET is directed specifically for water quality stewardship, water quality issues, water quality training in general. And it crosses a number of lines in that it goes from getting physics and chemistry and cultural, a broad range of other subjects brought in, math skills and so forth brought in. It doesn't involve extra types of standards. It's just to meet the Michigan standards. So these particular grant proposals do not involve any additional funding by Grand Traverse County. They would be funded by the grants, and then we would provide the in-kind training with the MSU Extension Office site and staff.
Sonny?
First, I don't believe if Grand Traverse County is not being asked for any money, we have to approve this grant application. They can make it without us, correct?
Well, your policy on grants says that if a grant requires match, then it has to come to you first. If it doesn't require match, they can apply, and then you ratify it after the fact. But it's fine. Some departments do.
I have no problem, and I would move to make the grant applications that are outlined in this program. But I also would recommend that we talk to the Conservation District, because as we were outlined this morning, they just received a $200,000 grant for water education. So let's make sure that we, aren't duplicating any services here. Let's get the most bang for our bucks that we possibly can, because, that program was specifically designed for K-12 educators. So we want to make sure we're not duplicating services, and if, they got $200,000, we certainly don't want to turn around and spend other monies doing the same thing, so.
Support.
So the motion is to accept the...
Make the applications.
Oh, accept the applications. All right, and we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Okay.
And Roberta, the board will ratify this at the end of the month, but if there's a timing issue or anything, you can submit these grants now, and get them in and get them going if that's helpful to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we have staffing plan amendment.
Funding update.
Funding.
Funding. Oh, update. I guess I assumed that was the same thing.
I'm Jim Weisling with Michigan State University Extension Grand Traverse County office. And I'm here to give you an update on the Parents as Teachers funding. And in order to do that, just a reminder that in early October, the state of Michigan canceled our contracts for the Parents as Teachers program that we'd had for about 12 years and that we had for a couple of years into the future based upon lack of funding. That contract is roughly a $247,000 contract. It's very sizable. And it was used to provide early childhood education in-home to families in need in the Grand Traverse area. And it does have significant impact based upon studies on the child care fund and abuse and neglect, because it is used to, in fact, improve the circumstances in the home and provide early childhood education and parent education to people in need. You graciously provided us with 3 months of funding, or $49,000 as a gap funding mechanism because we actually got the notice of the cancellation of the contract after the beginning of the month that we were in. And we have been searching for alternative funding and also preparing to shut the program down in case we do not get funding. Based upon our best estimates and trying to be financially responsible, we calculated last week that we believe that all available funding will be exhausted by December 18th coming up. And therefore, based upon that information, and without any promise of additional funding, even though we heard that the state of Michigan had reinstated 60% of the early childhood education funds, we have been unable to confirm from Department of Human Services locally that they are going to re-grant those to this Parents as Teachers program. And as I sit here today, I do not have any affirmation that they are going to restate or reinstate our contract even at a lower level. So based upon all of that, I wanted to share all of that with you because this is an update, and that takes me to another issue. Based upon all of that information, we have begun to shut the Parents as Teachers program down. It involves about 5 individuals, actually, but we're going to deal in FTEs here in a minute, parts of people. Last week, we issued layoff notices to the staff of Parents as Teachers, effective December 18th. And I do not believe at this point in time that we will be able to secure funding, either through other grant requests, even though we have made them, or through the courts. Excuse me. We have asked the courts to explore the possibility, and it is not highly probable that that will be a viable mechanism for continuing the program. So, I'm open for questions, and then I guess actually we'll deal with a staffing change unless you have some other suggestions.
Sorry?
Jim, I guess the only comment that I have, you mentioned the fact that the state may be re-implementing at least a portion of that. Is there a deadline per se to make this staffing plan change? We have a number of staffing positions that are not necessarily filled at any point. Would it hurt us anywhere to, and maybe the question is for Dennis, to delay actually approving the staffing plan change? Just if we lay these people off, just have those positions available if we acquire funding?
Well, you can hold the positions, you can do the layoffs and hold the positions in the staffing plan, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Typically, we do eliminate them, but if there's a hope that the program could come back, I think you could leave the positions just the way they are and then just have them unfilled until such a time that the program is reinstated. But the other thing, I guess, and I don't know which one of you are the liaison to or which board members the liaison to the Human Services Board, but I think it would be important to find out from our liaison, the commissioner liaison to the Human Services Board, what kind of discussion has taken place with the Department of Human Services. And if they've reinstated 60% of the funds for this program, Jim, you said that, who have you talked to? The director?
Jeff Sadler is the person we deal with on that particular
Is that a local person?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's the 0 to 3 secondary prevention programs, and there is a group of other people, of course, involved in that,
okay.
And MSU Extension is too.
Okay.
And we have been unable to get confirmation that any of those reduced funds are going to be re-granted to us.
I don't want to leave this hope out there that it's going to be reinstated, because, I mean, obviously we don't know it is, but I think it's okay to leave the staffing the way it is, and then, find our, see who our liaison to the Human Services Board is, or if you want me to call the director, I can do that. But
That would be me.
Oh, okay, and then maybe, have they had any discussion about this?
No, not at all. That's I was going to ask the next question.
Okay.
About
Yeah.
that. So when you say you can't confirm locally, it's not a local decision, is it?
Part of it, I think, could be a local decision, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm not sure, Ross, but it involves Department of Human Services locally, and then the 0 to 3 secondary prevention group of people, which are multiple agency people working in this 0 to 3 early childhood education and, abuse prevention, and it's very significant work. I'm not making light of that. It's just, there's not enough money to go around, probably. And so that's our dilemma.
So this Jeff Sadler,
Sadler.
Sadler?
S-A-D-L-E-R.
Does he work for Dawn McLaughlin then?
I'm not exactly sure how he interrelates with Dawn in the local DHS, or how he relates to Lansing, but he is the person.
He's not a local person.
I'm not sure if he's actually local or not.
Well, Jim, I might suggest that perhaps you could meet with Dawn, or perhaps, Commissioner Richardson would be willing to do that too. I'll do it if necessary, or if it's helpful, but I think you should make sure we explored that fully, just to understand where that 60% funding is.
I think it would help if the county, if Ross, if you perhaps became involved in this, if you would, I think it would be beneficial.
I know the board feels that this is a project that you'd like to see continued, and my suggestion is if a meeting could be set up with you and Commissioner Richardson and Dawn, at least explore, what their position is on the money is the first step, I would think.
Yeah. So when you're talking to Jeff Sadler, he's not here locally then?
I have not had the primary discussions with Jeff. It has been Jennifer Berkey, because she is the person who has in fact written the grants and has been dealing with them.
Okay.
So that's why I'm not clear as to exactly where he sits or is in relationship.
Okay.
So.
All right, maybe I should give Jennifer a call first and
Sure, if you would.
That's all right with you.
Sure, that would be very appropriate.
Commissioner, do you think we should leave the staffing plan alone for the time being while we investigate this?
Well, if it doesn't hurt not to change it, why don't we just let it go for the moment?
The one thing that we do have, it was a combination staffing plan change. In addition to reducing 3.47 FTEs of program assistants in that program, also involved another person. And so what we had to do was add 0.6 FTEs in the staffing plan to provide the additional time for the Safe Kids program. And so there's a combination of things in there. If you, I think it's important to add that 0.6 FTE into the staffing plan on behalf of Safe Kids, because that one could slip by the first of the year and have some consequence.
Well, then my suggestion is go ahead and do the staffing plan changes. We can add the others back in at almost any time. That won't create any kind of problem for you. So in order to make sure we preserve that 0.6, I think go ahead and add it back in, because I don't know what you'll do if 60% of the funding is granted. We may have to reduce that staffing anyway. So
we would have to change the staffing plan, because obviously there would not be enough funding to maintain the 3.47 FTEs.
So are we trying to stay with the recommendation here?
I would suggest you stay with the recommendation, and then we'll schedule a meeting with DHS to find out what's going on.
Sonny?
I guess, the thing that I would point out is this board obviously felt this program was significant enough and touched people in this community that were at risk, that we approved granting additional funding to fund it through the end of the year, or now it's December 18th. So, I think we really truly need to be an active participant in the discussion to secure whatever funding we can possibly get to the state to maintain whatever portion of it we have.
And that would be appreciated by us. That would be welcomed.
And Jim, I talked with Dean yesterday. I think we're going to go ahead, we talked with Greg Brainerd, I think we're going to go ahead and still submit a child care fund application as an amendment to their child care budget to see if we can't get that. Of course, we're going to have to get numbers so that the county board knows that's a 50% reimbursable grant and it will have an impact on child care fund. I'm disappointed to hear that it may not work, but it's at least an option that we'll follow through with, and then would have to be back to you to talk about the 50% funding that would be necessary to cover the local half.
According to Greg, the difficulty in operating the program through the child care fund is, first of all, it has to be operated through the courts. And secondly, more importantly, it is a 50% reimbursement. So the county then would have to fund the program 100% up front and then later go for just a 50% reimbursement. So as opposed to currently, we receive 100% of the funding in payments.
But we do that regularly, Jim.
Sure.
I mean, that child care fund is $1.1 million next year. We'll probably spend every penny of it, but I want the board, if that's a possibility.
It is a possibility.
And there's a creative way, you know, we're always doing those kinds of things. If we can creatively come up with a way to manage it through that court with you guys, and I want the board to at least have the option of being able to say, yep, we're going to kick in the 50% in order to keep this program going. 50% is better than, 100% local funds. So we'll still explore it. I think it's worth it.
Mr. Chairman, while I hope these positions can certainly be reinstated with some outside funding, I would make a motion to approve the staffing plan amendment as outlined by the MSU Extension.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to support to amend MSU Extension staffing plan. Any further discussion?
Right now, pretty much okay.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Okay, we amended the staffing plan. Now, we're MSU Extension, what's the next one?
Thank you. I'll relinquish the chair, I think, to
And
London.
I just asked Jim, I said, how's the rest of your funding look? And he says he thinks it looks good. He thinks they're in pretty good shape.
I will share this with you, since you asked. About several weeks ago, I told you that, in fact, we were threatened with a veto, 100% elimination of funding. And in fact, that veto was not issued by the governor. But as I said, the best case scenario was that we were going to be operating beginning October 1 of this coming year at a almost 50% reduction. And so what's happening right now is that MSU Extension is trying to restructure and position itself to be able to continue to function with a 50% reduced budget. Now, that's on top of about a 30% budget reduction over the prior 8 years. In other words, it's been a gradual decline of about 30%, and then a 50% reduction on top of that.
Would that be 2010-11 fiscal year?
That would be October 1 of 2010 is when that state allocated budget comes in minus 50%. Right now, our budget is roughly what it was last year, but it is 44% stimulus monies.
Yeah.
And when the stimulus monies go away, we have no reasonable expectation that the state will then ante up the additional 44%. And so we are facing a significant restructuring and downsizing beginning October 1 of 2010. I can't tell you exactly what that will be yet. I don't even know myself, and MSU Extension is trying to work through that. There are suggestions that we will move away from county administrative scenarios to district, 10 county scenarios as opposed to county by county representation. And in a proposal, we would be part of a 10-county Northwest Michigan district. Now, I don't know that that will happen or not. And right now, it doesn't affect us, Dennis. You asked the question, are we okay right now? Well, yes, right now we are okay. We're operating pretty much as we were. However, if you really look at that scenario, it means probably a very significant reduction in services. in the future from MSU Extension in a variety of ways, in agriculture, in 4-H, in parenting education, in community and economic development, everything will have to be reduced and will have to be delivered in a different way. So the future does not look too promising. Right now, we seem to be okay for this year. So that's the rest of the update.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's now community ties.
Good morning. I'm Wanda Repke with MSU Extension. I'm the 4-H Extension Educator for Grand Traverse County. And I just wanted to take a few minutes this morning to update you all on where we are with the Community Ties Project. It is a 2-year outreach and research project that we're engaging with the College of Communication at MSU. And so we're going into our 2nd year. And basically the project is about trying to connect adult professionals locally with young people, because we'd like young people to be able to see what we as adults are continuing to do to try to make a living in Grand Traverse County, and hopefully young people will see that there is opportunity and we can maybe keep some of our motivated and bright young people here, or if they do, go off to get an education, that we can attract them back to our community. So because this is an online social network project, I just wanted to let you know that currently on the Community Ties/Traverse site, we have 206 users, and 81 of them are adults, and 125 are young people. On the site, if you haven't been on there yet, we do have a blog feature. We've had students at Traverse City West add information such as, like, what's my dream for the future, writing good emails, just various topics. We also have a feature on there that is called Zazzle, and if you haven't heard of that, it's an online store where you can buy, well, at this point it's Traverse City West because that's the school we're working with, but Traverse City West logo items like t-shirts, ties, mugs, bags. So if you're a TC West fan or you have students that go there, you can still get some stuff for Christmas. And we set that up because the Zazzle store, through that function, if there's any profits that are made there, are going back to the school. So trying to kind of get a little entrepreneurship piece going. The other feature on the site is we just have a featured member. Last month it was Michael Kurth with Inside Out Gallery. And this month is actually David Skrbeck. He's with Electro-Optics Technology Incorporated. And mostly we picked those folks because they really do have a complete profile on the site. So it gives the students who see it a really good kind of understanding of what a typical day is, kind of what their education is, what are they, what are you kind of income. The last piece is currently we're promoting an internship competition. So I believe, Chris, do they all have the internship competition flyer, or are they getting it?
Right here.
Yay! So I would just like you to take a look at that and promote that to any folks who you think, both students as well as businesses or nonprofits. Currently we have 11 students that have applied, and we have 4 local businesses. Actually, one's the Grand Traverse Resource Recovery, Four Corners Photography, the Record Eagle, as well as United Way's Volunteer Center. So that runs through December 18th, and what we're trying to do is either, if the stars align and we get a match with a local business and a student who's kind of looking for the same thing. If not, we'll start with the student side and try to place them in an appropriate internship, part-time job role this winter. So the last thing I have, and I think all of you do have a little postcard. That is my challenge to each of you, to go onto the site, become a user, and then once you're approved, because I do check criminal histories on adults before they're approved, create your profile. It would be great to have your complete profile on there to add to the users that we currently have. And you have 2 postcards. So actually it's a 2-pronged challenge. For you personally to go on and do it, and then for you to share that with another adult professional so they can add their profile to the site. That's my brief update for this morning. Any questions?
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
You got a challenge.
I look forward to seeing you on the site.
Okay. And Public Works.
Good morning.
Morning.
This was brought up to L&A yesterday and on this agenda. So one of the things I've added to this meeting was the record that happened in June when this was first proposed to consider a reorganization and of the Board of Public Works structure.
Just to, for the commissioners who may not have seen the meeting yesterday, I believe the L&A committee made a recommendation to go to Ways and Means with a motion to ask for a meeting with the G5 townships, the Board of Public Works, I think Resource Recovery Council was added, and all township supervisors to have a general discussion about the organization of the BPW.
And then also to bring John Axe in.
Yes, and to do that with John Axe as soon as it could be done.
Okay, reorganization, then that includes the elimination of sewer and water? Is that part of that?
That's one of the discussions, but the idea is whether or not we need to expand the Board of Public Works to add seats, and that would require legislative change. There's also the issue that has come up about whether or not the Elmwood Township Supervisor is qualified to sit on the Board of Public Works. The opinion is that as a Township Supervisor, he's not. Under the one opinion, there are three opinions that say he should. So they're looking to look at providing an amendment to the legislation. The Board of Public Works Act was created in the 40s, and in the 50s it was that you as a county supervisor could sit on the Board of Public Works. But at that time, every township supervisor was a member of the Board of Supervisors. And that has never been changed after it changed to county commissioners. So there's two sides and two opinions, and when you have two attorneys, you can have two opinions. We have four attorneys, and we have four opinions. But, so those are things that need to be discussed. But what this is, the current Board of Public Works, and I've mentioned many times that I take the blame for creating this, because I did. When I came here in '76, it was it consisted of the drain commissioner and 8 county commissioners. But we didn't have a sewer and water system at that time, we were just building it. So then it went into what is now pretty much the current structure, which has representation. The drain commissioners by statute, and the others were by election by the county board. 1 city rep, 1 county rep, a rural township rep. We didn't have resource recovery when we first created this because we didn't have resource recovery at that time. And then there was an urban township and then at large. And when resource recovery came in, it was my recommendation, rather than making another board, to add that function to the Board of Public Works. So we took 1 seat and made that resource recovery. And that was in existence without any issues, and traveled along building sewers and water systems, and it went fine until the early 90s, and there was a question then about where the recommendations for the spending of money was, and then the 5 townships requested the Board of Public Works to establish under the Board of Public Works the Sewer and Water Committee that were the 5 townships, and all of the documents were restructured so that anything that went to the Board of Public Works went through the Sewer and Water Committee first, because they only had 1 vote out of 9 on the board. And that was one of their concerns. And all of that system was in place in the early 90s, and that's been fine up until now. Then the septic plant comes along, and the 5 townships are on the hook for the bonds. And so they asked the Board of Public Works again to create what is the G5, now they named it, the 5 townships that are guaranteeing the bonds. And they set that up to deal with issues of the septic plant. And then they're coming back, and they made the recommendation that they define that Sewer and Water Committee does sewer and water projects, the G5 does the septic plant, and the Board of Public Works is over all. I gave this report in June that said we could save about $30,000 if we just eliminated the Sewer and Water Committee and began putting the township supervisors on the Board of Public Works. It takes a lot of time to prepare the two packets. They're large. This month, as I mentioned yesterday, this month, because the meetings are almost on top of each other, we're using the same packet for both meetings, so you can see the duplication. So, again, the proposed expanded Board of Public Works here was exactly what we said in June, was expand it maybe to 11. And at the time, the city representative was not voting on issues. They would not vote on issues, you remember, on all these things because
they still don't.
You're talking about sewer and water now.
Well, they do on some. On sewer and water, yes, but also on the Board of Public Works, they were not voting at times.
On the expenditure of money.
Yeah, it varied at times. I mean, the mayor did vote on a couple of issues when he was there rather than Bisdock, and I think Bisdock did vote on some issues before. But the question was, the city, I think, was coming into a position of becoming more cooperative than they had been. And the city engineer wanted to get some interaction working with the Board of Public Works. And I think we need to get the city more active and say, yes, it should be a voting member. So at any rate, what we proposed was to expand it to 11. And that would allow us to get the 6 township supervisors on. And my theory was that you might do it as the terms expired. On this one, though, we came up, there is one term that was coming up this time, and that's Scott Joswiak. Scott was just appointed, nice young engineer. You like to see the new generation. It's another whole generation that is there, but he said no, he can't afford the time, and so he's not asking to be reappointed. So that opened up an issue that said, should we start and get one more township supervisor on?
Okay, now, when you're proposing expanding from 9 to 11, that requires change in Lansing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the 9 members that we have now, are any or all of those seats dictated as to who they have to be?
Only the drain commissioner. The county board establishes where the other ones are.
Okay, so the drain commissioner is established by state law.
State law.
And the other 8 is basically up to us.
Yeah, totally up to the county board.
Okay.
And I think the other thing was that Peter Nethercutt, and when I made this proposal back in June, before I gave the proposal, I had talked to Peter and also to Mark?
Carl.
Carl Stasinski. And they had both said that if we were going to go with this reorganization, they both would step out of their terms. Peter has 1 more year, and I think Carl has 2. And they said they would step out and allow this to happen if we could get rid of the sewer and water. So that's where it stood, and they said, no, we're not going to do it at this time. And even the G5, when they met this last month, said, no, we're going to leave sewer and water where it is now. We'll separate septic and do this, but let's begin. If there are vacancies, let us ask the county board then to appoint supervisors, because they are the ones who are paying the money. And it is about I just looked at it this morning with it. That's when I went up and talked to Dean about total budgets. But the Board of Public Works is about an $11.4 million budget a year between the operating and the debt. And for instance, now the Road Commission is $16.5 million. Commission on Aging is $2.8. Resource Recovery around $750,000 next year. The airport is $10.1 million. It's a big operation, and when they're on the line for the whole $16 million, other than the per diem. And the per diem, I think, is less than $2,000, because none of the township supervisors are eligible to collect money, nor the drain commissioner because of their positions, nor the city commission representative. It's just the at-large people. So that's the background on it, and what L&A has done fits very well with what the G5 has recommended, because we were trying to schedule a meeting in January to look at John Axe's report and actually 2 or 3 authorities downstate, so they can see how it fits together between the city, the county, and the townships downstate where they have authorities. And my theory on that goes back to the old days that we put everybody in a bus, we leave here at 6 o'clock in the morning, you get back about midnight, and we have your total attention for about 18 hours. And you can talk about the benefits and the pros and cons of authorities, doing it with the Board of Public Works the way it is, expanding it. You can talk about the interlocal agreements. You can do the whole thing. So that's sort of the background. It's been interesting because where it started, we're coming back to it that where we said it is nice to have at-large people, and if you have at-large people, I'd love to have like a registered engineer, and we do. We have Scott, and we also have Peter Nethercutt, who are both engineers. You always like to have, if you can have an at-large, have an attorney. It's always nice to have one there. And then the third one is, it's always nice to have somebody who has finance. On the other hand, where the people are paying the bills, and it's, over $11 million, I think then you want to say they should have some more say maybe than they have. But it needs to be investigated. And the best way to do it is tackle it, go look at others and say, here's the options, and then you as a county board need to make a decision if you want to do anything with the Board of Public Works. The townships, on the other hand, could say, we want to form an authority, and if they have formed an authority, that would be that it would be only the operators. And I completed my 2 other forums last night, Long Lake and Peninsula, and that's 13 units of government now that I've been out to speak to. And it's mixed reactions, but what I'm finding in a lot of cases is they say if people are going to put a special assessment, we want it done by people who are elected. And that is, so then if you do it, we can hold you accountable if it doesn't work. In the case of that, if you look at the proposed Board of Public Works, everybody but one representative in there would be elected primarily, and resource recovery could be, depending on who the resource recovery wants to appoint.
Yeah, but Ross, in fairness, I know that's what people say, and I know they mean it. But if you think about it in terms of the proposed makeup of that board, you are taking, what you're doing is and that's true of the current board as well, you're taking 5 townships who have a financial interest, let's say, in the special assessment, and you're taking a 6th one who has a contractual relationship, Blair Township, with one of the 5, and they actually would have a majority on that board, and those people in those rural townships don't have any ability to elect or unelect them. The only one who gets elected and unelected by them would be the one county commissioner that sits on that board.
Depending on where that county commissioner is from.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
it's possible.
Absolutely. He may not have any.
I mean, our county commissioner now is from one of the G5 townships.
Exactly, that's a good point,
Last night at Peninsula Township, they went on record of opposing the special assessment. Now, in Long Lake Township, they were very much in favor of it. That was the most favorable one I've had.
Really?
In Union Township, Union, Fife Lake Township, and Fife Lake Village, they would like every township in the county to have a representative on the Board of Public Works, and everyone having an equal vote.
Ross, there would also be I think there would also be the possibility that others could join an authority. An authority does not have to just be the 5. An authority could have a county as a member, could have other townships as members. They might have to buy into it somehow, but they could be members.
That's exactly it. Now, the authority, as John Axes laid out, that is, it can be expanded as, for instance, if Long Lake came in now, they would have to buy in or contract like Blair does. If you have the authority, they come in and they buy in as a member. So it's, and the county could buy in as a member. The city, because we're using the wastewater treatment plant, it makes sense that if they had an authority, you'd want a city being part of that membership.
I just want to clarify a few things on the finances here.
Yep.
This is all paid for by user fees, correct? The Board of Public Works?
Yep,
Completely, okay. But with the townships, the townships contract with usually the city for sewer and water?
They physically own 50% of the capacity of the plant.
Okay.
Yeah, 49, I think.
Well, it's 49, but we have a lease on the other.
Yeah, on 7.
And then they contract for the other stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
but
they,
then
Yeah,
So-
but we,
So the township users pay their fees, their monthly, fees to the township, and then the township,
No, they're collected by the county, by the Board of Public Works.
oh, so it does go directly to the Board of
And
Public
then that
Works.
gets transferred right to the townships every month, and then they pay the actual operating costs back to the Board of
it's like a
Public Works.
reimbursable is how it works.
Okay.
But the actual maintenance, obviously, the maintenance of the wastewater treatment plant, of which they are part owners, is contracted with the city. And that's why I think Ross and I agree, the city has to be a part of this. But the work on maintenance and care and expansion of the sewer and water within those townships is done by the DPW staff.
Right.
And if they formed the authority, and that was covered in John's report too, that if they formed an authority, they could continue to contract with the county for staff, or they could
Absolutely.
create their own staff. Well,
Absolutely.
I always say if you create your own staff, you have all those nightmares of insurance, human resources, all the things that you don't like as an employer. But,
Ross, I did not stay last night to hear your presentation, but I noticed that there was a huge crowd of people there, and I imagine it was probably because of the park. Did you get a lot of questions from the public, or were the questions mostly from the township board?
No, there were some public, and Al Gray being the most vocal, and Al was my neighbor, so I know him very well, but he's been vocal all the time.
Yeah, forever.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know Al pretty well. But, no, there were, there were a number of questions, but the questions that were raised are ones that we're getting more and more of, is, I'm a single lady, I have no family, I've had no kids, and I have a fairly large house. I have two 1,200-gallon tanks. I don't want to pay for two tanks. I only pump it every 5 or 10 years because I don't use it much. So that's the argument. And then, you get the guy down in Fife Lake who has 3 tanks. He has 3 homes on his property that belong to his family. One is a 600-gallon tank. Another one's a 900-gallon tank. And the other one's a 1,000-gallon tank because they were built in the 50s, 60s, and 80s. So you're getting a lot of things that we are uncovering about. We didn't know people had 2 tanks. I now have a complete record of all of the septic tanks except Fife Lake Village. We didn't know Fife Lake Village had septic tanks, and there's part of the village that's on the other side of the tracks are not part of the sewer system. But a lot of the misinformation that is going on in these meetings is, the village manager of Kingsley called me yesterday, and I'm down in Paradise Township tonight. He said they're talking in the grocery store down there that everybody in the village of Kingsley is going to be assessed a special assessment for the septic plant. I said, no, that's not the case.
Because they're on a sewer.
Yeah.
Russ, I guess, first I would note that I was here to make some of those 16-hour bus trips in previous investigations and the airplane trips and the different types of issues. But, I have a lot of concern about the expanded BPW as it's outlined. Obviously, when I look at the makeup that's being proposed, I'm concerned that the BPW is the person who unquestionably has the ability to special assess septics in the county. So thereby the BPW board can assess, townships within my district who have no representation there, but that BPW board will be able to assess them a tax. And that's taxation without representation, no matter how I cut it. And that concerns me. I've said for a long time the BPW needs to create their own authority. It's their money. They need to control how to do it, and an authority should be done. That being said, I remember a meeting with John Axe that we held at Garfield Township shortly after their new hall was opened, and the room was absolutely packed. John outlined our current program, although he, by his own admission, is pretty convoluted. It works here, and it has worked here. Whether or not it works here into the future is a question. I still, and I hate to talk about the politics piece of it, but one of my concerns is the fact that these 5 townships who are, very verbal right now about things like the septic plant, have new township boards, new township supervisors, and choose to take no ownership of decisions that were made by their predecessors. And I think that's where we get a lot of the discussion that we're getting. And that to me is unfortunate. The fact is, treating septic is still the right thing to do. We have the plant, and whether it's the right plant, the wrong plant, we can have a million different discussions about that, but this is the plant we have. I can't send the pumps back to water, so I can't send the blocks back to the concrete service. We simply have to figure out how to pay for it.
I think the G5 was their movement to say we are taking control of it and taking responsibility. That's why they wanted the G5, so they could do that.
And I truly believe this joint meeting is absolutely necessary. Whether or not when an authority is created, or, I certainly hope that is the way we end up eventually, an authority will be created to handle water and sewer issues. Whether or not resource recovery is part of that program, or whether we bring resource recovery somewhere else, resource recovery is truly designed to be county-wide, if you will. So I believe the BPW or a water, sewer and water authority should be created to handle the water, sewer, and septic issues, but I believe resource recovery should be separate from that.
I was just going to say that I know they are new, the G5. We are talking about new township boards and new township supervisors, but I do believe they are taking responsibility. I think they're willing to face what they have to do to make the septic plant financially viable. Most of the resistance seems to be coming from the non-guaranteeing townships, from the rural townships that are not part of that. If you want to talk about having this decision made by countywide elected officials, it's the county commission that is the only board of that. And I know everyone has said, the lawyers have said, well, only the Board of Public Works can, issue a special assessment. But of course, there are other ways, I think, that the county commission could do it if they chose to, maybe through some sort of a licensing fee or whatever. But I haven't seen any great interest in that from, my fellow county commissioners.
One of the things Commissioner Inman mentioned yesterday is that he wants to have this conversation and ask the county board members to discuss whether or not they are in favor of an assessment, even though we have no authority to move forward with one.
In reality, the Board of Public Works, when it was formed, and one of the things was, yes, it's going to represent all the counties, and that's why we had a rural county rep on it. And the other thing was that when you do, you have Kingsley, and you say, do you want to become part of this? You can buy in, and no, we talked with them, and they didn't. And they said, we want to run our own. Well, that's fine, run your own. And there were things that happened, and the county board deserved a lot of credit on this in the first place, because you would have had all kinds of separate water systems. The county board said to Garfield, we will not do the bonds for you unless you talk with the city and buy water. And but then East Bay broke out from that and said, no, we want to do our own. So it's worked, and it is convoluted, but people, Doug Mansfield said on Monday night down in the meeting down in Fife Lake, he's on the Townships Association thing. He goes down there, and people always ask him, we want to come up and look at your Board of Public Works up there and how it works, because we can't believe it works that way. He says that they find that it has worked for years, but it is breaking down, and whether it's politics or whether it's this new thing. The septic plant spawned some of this because it is county-wide, and it's not the 5 townships, but the 5 townships are on the hook for it.
Yeah.
It's in it.
And I really wish I would have stayed for your presentation last night, because I know there was resistance at Garfield when you made your presentation about the assessment.
Yeah.
And I, of course, grabbed the microphone and asked the person the question, do you want a county-wide assessment, or do you want to be solely responsible for paying for this when Bay Harbor goes away out of your general fund? How do you want to handle it? And, immediately, oh, well, an assessment's not so bad.
Well, and it has been very mixed. As I say, the 2 extremes were yesterday, with Long Lake being very pro and they had one individual out there who lives on the lake, has a 2,000-gallon tank. He pumps it every 2 years religiously because he doesn't want to impact the lake. He said, but I have two neighbors who never pump, and I'm not sure that their systems are working. And so that's the type of thing. And then you go to Peninsula, who I thought would be very supportive, and they said, no, I don't want any special assessment. And I think some of that stems from stuff in the project with the water thing.
Yeah, and a lot of here is the taxation without representation.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And that's another thing too. I was going to address it now. If you form an authority can't do an assessment. Can't do
the authority can't, and if the authority then would be doing it on a per gallon, they can set fees and charge. But
they would truly fund with a user fee.
Yeah. So then if we
and the authority, and that's the thing. If you talk with some of the others, they have a premium downstate on some of the ones who are outside. And like next year, if we get more waste from outside the county, they will go back at the 12 cents. And that's another issue. Somebody said, well, and the guy in Long Lake, if I pump every 2 years, can I pump and have no cost? Well, it's set up on a 3-year pumping pattern. He said, well, I'd want to maybe pump every 2 years and I'll pay for my extra ones.
And I apologize for not being there last night, Ross. I had a customer with a very ill snowplow that needed my attention.
Actually, that was the most fun meeting I've had so far out of 13. So.
More fun than Grant?
Grant was pretty good. No, Grant was good. Mayfield was a little tough. Paradise will not be too nice tonight, I think. But.
Okay. Any further discussion?
You ready for Greenwood?
Well, I just think we need to encourage the scheduling of a joint meeting with the BPW and the G5 committee. I think that's critical.
There's already a motion from LNA that's going to Ways and Means so that everyone can discuss this, and that's the motion.
And what you have in your packet, I know Dennis made it available, this is the full John Axe report. And I had never seen it until recently. I got it from Katie, and I'll return it to her today. Because in there, they will reference 12, 15, 16 appendices.
Yeah.
And they were not there, but they're all in here. And they're all, what they are really are the
That's the one from November of '07, right?
Yeah.
Because I have a copy of the cover sheet, but I didn't have any of the appendices. So, by the way,
it's there in the office.
If it's possible, I'll get a copy of that.
A copy of that?
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean with the appendices.
We'll get you one.
Yeah. Most of them are the water and sewer agreements to provide for certain bond issues and things like that. But, okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ross.
Just looking forward to a 16-hour trip.
They're fun, aren't they, Sonny?
They're interesting.
The first one on that really was how you got your IT department. When it was first here, we wanted a committee to look at IT, and I asked them to appoint, and that time we had 15 members on the board. And they appointed 5, and I said, I want 3 that are directly opposed. And Clarence Clark said, I don't want any damn computer in this county.
And that would be Jenny Old's father.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So Clarence was the chair of that committee, and we arranged it. And one of the best things we did is we toured the county down right on the border. And we went in there, we were looking at the front of the court's operation. And Clarence sidled up right next to this lady of his generation who was working there on a computer. And he said, this damn thing isn't any good, is it? She said, I've been here for 30-some years, and this is the best thing that we've ever done in my life. And that changed. So you need to talk to people and see.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I remember the trip to Hennepin County in Minnesota to look at incinerator plants and the Reuter facility.
Resource recovery, yeah.
All right, thanks, Ross.
Thank you.
And we have a moment here for public comment, if anybody would like to. No? All right, seeing none. Any unfinished business?
Well, we should go back to number 3.
Oh, right, yes, number 3. Let's go to the facilities management on the bid response for the Howard Arena entrance stores.
Yep. You can see the letter is pretty self-explanatory. This was included in the 2009 budget. It is part of the 5-year maintenance improvement plan, and it is for replacement of the Howe Arena doors, the interior entrance doors. We've replaced some of the doors at Civic Center, but not these doors. The low bid was by the Bay Glass for a total of $10,730. The money is in the budget. and Danny is recommending approval.
I would move that we accept the bid from By the Bay Glass for $10,730 to replace the interior doors to Howe Arena.
Support.
Okay, we have motion and support. Sonny?
Dennis, is there a problem with the fact that this work will not be completed until January of 2010 and its money's budgeted in 2009?
Yeah, Dean has talked with Danny about that, and they've figured out the way to do that, so. I don't know if they're going to make progress payments or what, but he may have to transfer a portion of over to 2010.
Chris?
Dennis, there's a huge, and I always ask this question, when there's such a discrepancy, there's a huge discrepancy between the high bid and the low bid. How is that? I mean, if they're...
Yeah, I truly don't know why that is, but, you know, oftentimes a business, you know, first of all, when we see a large discrepancy like that, the first thing Danny does is he goes in and investigates with the low bidder to make sure the quality of the materials are appropriate, that they've done the work, that they have good references, and that's our first step. But oftentimes, what I have found is, depending on the amount of work that might be out there, a company will often put in a high bid, really not expecting the work. If they get it, you know, that's kind of gravy, but they may not have a lot of interest in the project. And so, you know, what I can tell you, and I don't know what the case was with TC Glass, but I can tell you that Danny did spend time with By the Bay Glass and said that they're very capable of doing it. They have the right equipment and materials, and that they'll do the job the way we expect it.
And the bids are obviously spec, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and what's interesting is when you look at the breakdown, the doors and hardware costs between By the Bay Glass and McBride Brothers, the first and the third bidders, are almost exactly alike.
Right.
The frames, on the other hand, are completely different.
Yeah,
You know, like maybe I'm willing to do the doors and the hardware, but I don't want anything to do with the frames. You know, and then when you look at TransAuto in the middle, you know, they're higher for the doors and the frames, but they're half the cost for doing the frames. You know, which doesn't, you know, there's no consistency there. So, but the top three bids are all within, you know, what, less than about 8%. So the other one's way out somewhere else, but the top three bids are all within about 8%.
And then I assume this is just because they need modernizing, and this will tighten them up, and for energy efficiency probably?
Part of it is for energy efficiency, part of it is the doors are starting to break down just from age.
Yep.
You know, they're hard to lock, you know, we're having trouble with them, we try to repair them. But we went through a couple years ago and did all the exterior doors. But, you know, now the interior doors are having that same problem, you know, and so we try to, you know, keep them updated as best we can.
These are the original doors?
Yes.
So that makes them, what, 30, 35 years old?
Oh, yeah, at least.
And remember, new insulated aluminum doors are going to be exactly that, insulated aluminum. So when you have ice on the arena, you're not going to have that cold radiating out into the lobby area and into the rest of the facility. And vice versa, the heat from outside is not going in on the ice.
Great. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion to accept the bid from By the Bay Glass. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Okay, motion carries. Now we have the administrator's update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item is the board directed me to go back and work with the sheriff on community policing. I began that process and met with the sheriff and Nate Alger. Sonny was also invited but was unable to attend as the chairman of the committee, and Beth Friend attended as well. We had a good discussion. The sheriff has concerns, and we had a lot of discussion about whether the community policing policy would be a sheriff policy or a county board policy, and I think we tried to stress that it really takes input from both, and we can determine who is the appropriate one to address it as actually adopting a policy. So we had good discussion. We decided that they directed that Nate and I would go to work at drafting a sample policy that we would bring back to the committee, to the sheriff, because the sheriff would need to, you know, have some review of it, and then, of course, the county board. And we intend to have that for you right after the first of the year with a recommendation on what a community policing policy might look like. The big decision will be, is this a policy adopted by the board that the sheriff will use as a guideline, or is it a policy that the sheriff will have for the townships? And that's kind of been the area of contention. The sheriff does not want to have a policy that he has guidelines that the townships have to follow, but we indicated that, of course, the impact financially is could be significant on the county if the county is, if all of a sudden, 10 townships come in and say, we want a community police officer, how would the county board make a determination other than budget on who would get officers if we couldn't afford 10? So we had a lot of discussions about ways to address that issue. And what we kind of indicated was we think we need to have some criteria based on crime statistics and things like that we could look at and give the sheriff some guidelines, because I told the sheriff, and I think Beth agreed, that one of the things that's going to clearly be the case is if we receive requests for more community police officers than what you can afford to fund, that we're going to look back to the sheriff for some advice on what he recommends in terms of best serving the community and reducing crime. And so we had a really good discussion, and they're very cooperative, and we'll work on putting a policy together on that. Next item is your direction to me to work with the city on the city's request for central records, for looking at a negotiation on central records and on city police officers, our city police program. I met with the city manager the day after you took action. The city manager indicated to me that he had still not at that time had any discussion with his board to narrow down exactly what the issues that they wanted to pursue were. And so he was not in a position to have those discussions with me, but indicated as soon as he had that discussion with the board that he would get back with me, and then we would sit down and I would identify the issues for you that are out there on behalf of the city. Some of you may recall, it was scheduled for a study session on the night that they had a very large crowd to discuss the contract for the Opera House. And it went on so long that they just didn't get to that issue, and so they haven't had that discussion yet. So as soon as they do, the city manager will be back with me, and then I'll present some information to you. In our discussion that we had, I mentioned this yesterday, in our discussion that we had a week or two ago about setting up a special committee, and it was actually, I think, in our discussion where we talked about setting up a special committee to work on this city-county police law enforcement issue. There was some discussion that came about, and I think it was Commissioner Richardson who kind of said, well, the way this thing could work is, or maybe it was me who said, the way this thing could work was, we would go talk with them, and then we'd bring back, kind of what they wanted, have a discussion with the board, and then we would go from there and go back and negotiate on behalf of the board. And it occurred to me, and this is really mostly for Commissioner Max Bauer and Richardson, it occurred to me that we haven't really done that with the Senior Center Millage Committee. I was directed to go back and work on a sample agreement with the city manager on what terms might be for operating a senior millage. And I mentioned this to Commissioner Stepka, who's on your committee as well, and yesterday, and he agreed that probably what we should do is have you folks do an update to the county board of how that committee is going, to make sure we're on the same page, and then I'll go back and talk with the city manager and kind of finish up the details of a proposed agreement. I hope that's okay. Does that meet with is that okay with you? Does that make sense to you? It made sense to Commissioner Stepka.
Yeah, I think so. So the information we had from like a month ago is pretty much the same information as far as, now we're talking about the senior center.
Yeah.
We're in pretty much the same place.
Well, we're working on like the pieces of it. We're doing the investigation of the employees and the MERS impacts and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
We're still working on all that. But I think it might just be good for the commissioners to maybe give an update to the board about where that committee's at, and then I'll go back and finish it. I don't want to go negotiate any kind of terms with the city manager unless I know the county board is supportive of that.
Yeah, no, that's...
Is that okay?
I don't think we ever indicated we want you in negotiations. We just wanted a discussion.
Well, no, we did indicate that we wanted him in negotiations.
Well, discussion.
I think Dennis's point is before he hammers out the final details, he's got to make sure he's on the right track.
Well, he's got to make sure the board supports that track.
That's what we call the right track.
Okay, all right, yes.
That's what I call the right track. So,
yes.
All right, so we'll do that. Next item is we have tentatively hired an HR director. We're not going to announce that person's name yet until they go through their physical and their psychological evaluation. The committee yesterday was kind of surprised to know that we do a psychological on department heads, but of course we do. And so, but we have a person on board, and we expect them to start the last week of the month. So like in 2 weeks, pending the finishing of their testing.
So you indicated it was a man?
No.
Or you didn't?
You didn't
say
indicate.
anything? Oh, I thought you said
No.
he. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a woman.
Oh.
The next item is, I had a meeting with the Economic Development Corporation representatives and city staff to talk about the Recovery Zone Bond Program. And this is a stimulus program that the federal government brought down. County's eligible for about, I think it's around $12 million. And understand, these are local bonds that we sell. But the way the program is set up, part of the money is for private investment and part of the money is for public infrastructure. The bonds are sold locally. There are bonds, but the difference between non-taxable bonds and taxable bonds are reimbursed by the federal government at roughly 35% over the life of the bond issue. And so it's an economic development stimulus tool to try to get further development going. One of the things that the federal government will do and the state will do is they will look to communities to say, every community is allocated, every county is allocated a percentage based on their population. And what they're going to do is, and the state's already started this, they're saying, if you're not going to use them, we want to know, because they're going to try to take them back and use them in other areas of the state. So we're working on trying to identify projects that might be possible for us here in the community, and just to kind of be able to give that initial response to the state that says, nope, we expect to need this money, and then go through the normal processes with the county, with the city, with the townships, to determine if in fact we will use them. We're also going to open discussions. We've already opened discussions with the 5 surrounding counties. I said the same thing yesterday. 5 surrounding counties, to see if there isn't some way that we could pool the bonds that they're eligible for and use them on a regional basis in an effort to try to secure monies that might end up going back in some of these other counties that may not be able to use them. So I just wanted to update you that we're working on that program.
My understanding is, I know we're going to talk about this at EDC tomorrow morning. My understanding is about $5 million of that is considered public bonds.
Yeah, I think it's 4.8 roughly.
And about $8 million is private.
Yes.
Private bonds.
Yes.
Were there any ideas on what kind of projects?
I can't speak specifically to it. Yes, Gene Dorenzi had contacted several local, or maybe it was Brian Crow had contacted several local companies who have...
In terms of the private bonds?
Yes, who have projects that are in some stage of development that might meet the timeline, because the other thing that's a requirement of this is these bonds have to be sold by the end of next year. So just the timing of selling bonds and developing projects, meeting the guidelines of the federal government and selling bonds, that in itself is going to be very restrictive. Also, I think with the private bonds, there have to be financial guarantees from the company. So that in itself will again limit the kinds of projects that might be eligible for this. So we think there may be 1 or 2 or 3 projects that might actually meet the criteria.
Well, Haggerty has to build another building as part of the...
Yeah, and I believe that's one of the names that were mentioned, Commissioner.
Yeah.
And so right now, I think Gene is working on developing some criteria that the county board can look at if in fact they decide to set up a program that could, and then the criteria and they're going to come to the county board and ask the county board whether or not they want to have a program like that. That doesn't commit you to spending the money. It just
Well, we
says
have to
we're gonna do it.
approve a recovery zone.
That's correct.
Which will probably be the whole county, right?
That's what we think, yes.
Yeah.
And then the projects would go through their normal mechanisms, but wanted you to be aware of that. Had a meeting a week or 2 ago with Commissioner Max Bauer, who heads the Pool Scholarship Committee, and we had some discussions about how the Pool Scholarship Committee would be run, and it sounds like she's going to come back and talk to you next week about that as well. We went initially, and I apologize that we weren't involved earlier on, but my understanding was that that the program was going to attempt to be run with Commissioner Max Bauer was going to volunteer her time and her husband's time to run a program, and then use volunteers and some paid staff and run this program out of the Pavilions pool. And I just wanted the board to understand that we kind of recommended strongly that this be a program run through our Howe Arena pool, and that that we run it with county staff running the program. And I think it was a very good meeting. They were very agreeable. We're working through the details of that now. And I think the funding issue is still an issue on how we're going to handle that.
It is, Dennis. And I will tell you that initially our first choice was to run the program through the Civic Center pool. We asked Jason for a discount for the disadvantaged children so the scholarship money could go further, and he declined. Therefore, I went out to, well, I spoke with Great Wolf Lodge, and as you know from my phone call to you, Great Wolf offered their swim program at a reduced rate of $40 per child. I went to the Pavilions and asked if we could use their pool for nothing, and they said yes. We simply were trying to stretch those scholarship dollars as far as we possibly could. I think what's distressing for me is we had, we had staff involvement. It was reported at Parks and Rec Board meetings, and we had volunteers. We had WSIs, we had high school kids that were willing to do community service and help. And it looked like we might be able to service approximately 500 children. Now, due to the cost of Easling Pool lessons, it looks like we're only going to be able to service about 115 children. Be that as it may, it is what it is. And we certainly don't want to put the county at any liability or any risk in any way, shape, or form. And if that means using Easling Pool, then that's fine. What I'm going to ask the board next week at Ways and Means is if they will allow the scholarship money to be stretched further and use the swim lessons there at a reduced rate. What we're planning on is not necessarily displacing county residents that have already signed up, etc. What we're hoping to do is, if there's a class with only 1 or 2 students in it, fill it in. It does increase revenue for the pool at no extra cost, and it stretches the dollars farther.
Yeah, I think, and I appreciate your willingness to consider those recommendations that we made. I agree. And I think if there's a way we can cut the cost for this program, I think that's a good thing to do, if we can cut the charge. And so, no, I support you bringing that back to the board. I think that makes good sense, because if we can put extra kids through and we get the same amount of revenue that the scholarship fund has, whether it's 100 kids or it's 200 kids, it's the same amount of revenue, and we get more kids through the program.
If the instructors are there working anyway,
yeah,
we're paying them.
I agree. So I appreciate your willingness to do that. I do want to ask a question, though. You said we were going to be able to serve about 500 kids, and we expect to be only able to serve 150 under this?
115.
115.
At $65 a piece, it's about 115 children.
Well, we're obviously not going to...
At $40 a piece, I think it's 187.
Okay, we're not, but hopefully we're going to get a reduction in that charge.
I'm hopeful, yes, and that's why I was asking you about what Bob Cooney said, because it's my understanding that from Bob now that reductions need to be run by the board, and that's fine.
Yep, I agree. So anyway, we think we've got that worked through. I do want to mention too, though, my preference, I think, is I saw 2 goals in this. I saw a goal of getting kids to swim. That was the first goal, and certainly we're going to achieve that. And the second goal was, I think, exposure to Easling Pool, so that people know that pool's there. That was part of what we were trying to achieve, and I hope we'll be able to do that. But I did want to tell you that if for some reason, you had asked me about the Great Wolf Lodge program, and, if the county is unwilling, and I'm not suggesting they would be, to do this at $40, and Great Wolf Lodge is willing to do it at $40, I think if we can get more kids through the program, that's better to do. The only requirement, and my big concern on this from the first day, was liability. the liability issue of having, it done with county sponsorship at a different pool with volunteers and things like that. That's always been my concern. But if, like I told you in our message, if Great Wolf Lodge was willing to do it at 40 and sign a contract taking the liability for the program, and let's say the county for some reason wasn't willing to do it at 40, then I would encourage us to look at the Great Wolf Lodge program, because I think you had a really laudable goal to get as many kids trained as we possibly can. And so
I am hopeful that we can work with the Civic Center.
I think we will.
I really am, because, Great Wolf Lodge, they put in about 150 kids through their program. They fill up extremely fast.
Yeah.
Corey did tell me, he's the aquatics director over there, he did tell me that they are raising their rates this fall, or this winter, so that they do expect to have some openings. But it's always been my preference to, I want the county to benefit as well as the children.
So, okay, good. So I think we're working on that. I think it's going well.
Dennis, can you make sure that Jason and Kim are here for that discussion with Ways and Means next week? I believe the aquatics director and the Parks and Recreation director should be part of this discussion as we talk about anything to do with the pool and the rates that we charge there.
Okay. I wanted to let you know the third floor remodeling is moving forward. Dispatch is pretty much, it is done. They're working. Pardon?
Humming along?
Humming along, and things are going well. Really, the move went very well.
Good.
The people from the north side of the building now have moved into the south side of the building and are occupying that space temporarily and occupying the basement as we do the remodeling on the north side of the building. And then as soon as that's complete, they will move all back into their areas, and then the rest of the move will take place. And so I just wanted to let you know that's going well. We had a meeting earlier this month, a couple weeks ago, with the sheriff, Al Schneider, myself, and representatives of the tribe to talk about a cross-deputization agreement that might take place between the sheriff and the tribe. My understanding is the 5 surrounding counties have cross-deputization agreements, but our county has not. And this sheriff has made no commitments, but we had a very good meeting with the tribal representatives, and they are open to the idea. The sheriff is open to the idea, and he's now investigating the benefits of that. And so I just wanted to let you know those discussions are taking place again, and hopefully we'll come to a good conclusion. The city is working on a strategic planning process for the first part of January, or for January. The city manager has asked me to be a part of the discussions, and so I've been in and out kind of talking with them about that issue. But I want to let the county board know that I think they're going to try to take a comprehensive look, it's kind of the big picture look of community and where it needs to go and those kinds of things. And this is all tentative, but I expect that they're going to invite the county board, invite the county board members to be there to participate in this. So I wanted to give you a heads up on that. I think they see the view that the county and the city need to work together on things as much as possible. And so I expect that you'll get an invitation to that, and I wanted you to know that. The last thing is, and this came as a result of the security study that we did, we're looking at developing a key / entryway card policy for use in the county. When we started this, over the years, we've had key policies, we've had authorizations of use of keys, now we have the computer cards. And what we're finding when we went in and inventoried it is it just needs to be audited and cleaned up. I mean, we have people still on there that are no longer here. I want to make sure we've got all the keys back. I want to make sure we've got all the security cards back, and we're trying to tighten this up. So we're looking at developing a policy on that. We're going to send something out to the departments asking them to all re-look at who they have authorized to use the policy, to use access to the building off hours. Everybody who accesses this building with the computer cards, we have a record of who it was, what time they came in, those kinds of things. But we want to clean that up. We want to tighten that up. And we want to encourage departments to only have authorized personnel that really needs to be in here on the weekends or at night having cards, so that we have as few cards out there as possible. The less cards, obviously, the less risk we have of people getting into the building at off hours. And then we're going to look at closing up the security again. Last weekend, We found another homeless person in the building here on a Saturday, whether one of the doors were ajar. We have employees that come in on the weekend, and as they're going in the door, someone is standing there waiting, trying to follow them in, you know. And so we're tightening those things up as best we can, and I wanted you to be aware of that.
I think all of us that come in after hours need to be cognizant of that, because I was here, I don't know, Saturday afternoon or Sunday, and picked up some stuff from my mailbox, and there was probably at least a half a dozen people standing outside the door, I'm assuming waiting for a ride.
A bus or a ride.
Or a bus. So, you know, I made sure that when I came in, I made sure the door pulled shut and latched behind me before I left. And, you know, sometimes that door comes closed and it doesn't quite latch if you're not a little...
It's good to pull on it.
Not a little cognizant of making sure that it's latched.
I don't have a key.
I could have come
I'm
on
okay.
upstairs and would have had no
How do you get a
access.
key?
You have to ask Dennis.
Yep, you can get a key. We can get you an authorization key.
I don't need one.
You know, I mean, again, our preference would be if you
I don't-
get here regularly or you live close, you know, we'd rather not have as few keys out as possible. But yep, if you access it to get your binders or stuff like that on a weekend, we certainly would give you a key.
I pick up most of my stuff in the evenings, obviously.
The other thing you could do always, if you needed to get in here on a weekend, you could call dispatch and say, hey, Commissioner so-and-so, do you think you come down?
Oh, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, no, they're okay with that, at the regular number, not at 911.
No, yeah. By the way,
I'm playing outside the building, you let me in?
That's all I had.
The other
I've
thing
got one
is,
thing I need to tell the
anybody you
board.
catch in the building, just threaten to put them on a planning commission or something like that.
Okay, Chris?
I just want to make the board aware, and I emailed Dennis right away. I opened up my email yesterday, kind of late in the evening, and there was an email from Lisa Kirby. I emailed Dennis right away. I CC'd Bob Cooney, and I have not responded, but I want to make the board aware that I did receive an email.
Yeah, I got your email last night, Commissioner, and I want to talk to Bob this morning. I mean, my initial response would be, send it to Bob, and, you know, and just, you know, not deal with it. And-
I'm not answering
Yeah.
it, no, I
I understand that, but I was trying to decide, should she send it to me, or should she send it to Bob?
I don't know
Cooney?
what to do with it.
I don't know what to do with it either, you know, frankly, so let me talk to Bob this morning, okay? If you want to just send it to me, and I'll get it to Bob if he says he wants to see it. Bob doesn't handle this case, it's handled through Chris Cook, but, yeah, I can't imagine what it is.
So she's a plaintiff in one of the lawsuits, right?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Okay, I think I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll be gone now.
Okay. Thank you.